Okay,
Yeah,
good. So, yeah, we can get started.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to another InfoSec research seminar. Today we have Amirreza Sarencheh from University of Edinburgh. He is a PhD student with Aggelos Kiayias and Markulf and is going to tell us about the recent work called PEReDi, Privacy Enhanced Regulation Friendly and Distributed Central Bank Digital Currencies. Amirreza, please.
Thank you very much for the introduction, Amirreza. Very glad to be here and give this talk. I'm going to talk about, as Amirreza said, fast, privacy-enhanced, and regulation-friendly distributed payments with applications to cryptocurrencies, CBDCs, and stablecoins. And this is a joint work with Aggelos, Kiayias, and Markulf from University of Edinburgh. For payment systems, we can have two different approaches. Basically, the first approach is a coin-based one, which says the ownership of one or more coins is changed from sender to the receiver. And the second one is an account-based one, which says account of the sender is debited while the receiver's account is credited. And the important point here is that we need state to actually sort of manage this payment system. And state is a must for both approaches. And this state actually comes in a form of a database where we keep track of, for example, Alice has 10 currencies, Bob has 20 currencies, and so on and so forth. And due to the avoiding single point of failure and single point of trust, we are interested in distributing the sort of responsibility of managing the state to a different independent servers, which we call state maintainers. Which means that we have to be able to actually tolerate Byzantine adversary who tries to actually split the view of maintainers. So for example, as we see here, for example, one of these servers or maintainers of the state of the system can be malicious, and basically adversary can control them. And we want to make sure that the state of the system is updated correctly and adversary is not able to actually split the view. So here, let me quickly go over the simplest account-based approach without privacy to see how it works. We have here our Alice, who is a sender who wants to transfer, let's say, value of E to the receiver, who is Bob. And the simple transaction is going to be something like this: signature of Alice on value of transaction and the identity of the receiver, who is Bob. And of course, Alice should have enough funds so that we are sure that balance of actually Alice after transaction will not be basically negative. And also, each account should be associated with a pair of public secret key. And the state is changed as follows: the sender's account is debited by V and receiver's account is credited by V. And on the implementation side, each maintainer or server, server and maintainer is interchangeably used. So each maintainer has a copy of the state of the system, and upon sender's broadcast, once sender actually broadcasts transaction to these servers, maintainers, each maintainer is going to update their local table, which is their perspective of what is the state accordingly after getting the transaction from sender. And there are some pitfalls here. For example, the first one is that what if the broadcast, once sender broadcast transaction to servers, what if the broadcast is not reliable? So that the state of honest maintainers can diverge and they will be confused about the fact that, okay, what is the most recent rightful state of the system? Well, one of the solutions for that can be using things like Byzantine broadcast together with honest majority, which will give us this confidence saying that, okay, well, now we are sure that the state of the system is going to be updated in a distributed way. And there's no problem actually here. What's happening here? Byzantine broadcast simply says that if we have a user here who broadcasts message among different servers or maintainers, either they all sort of receive a very same message or protocol sort of aborts. This is a property of Byzantine broadcast, and we'll see why we need an honest majority in a minute. But having this, we will be sure that basically the state of the system is updated correctly. So now the question is, can we do better? Basically, this protocol that I explained here, Byzantine broadcast, is a costly protocol. It's not, cheap. And basically, generally, we are interested to remove any communication among maintainers. And we want maintainers to actually not talk to each other. And basically, no need for any heavy protocol like Byzantine broadcast or Byzantine agreement, which is used in BFT consensus protocols or any other consensus protocol. And the answer here is that, yes, it is possible to achieve it, to actually remove the need for a Byzantine broadcast or agreement or any other BFT consensus protocol in an optimistic case of a sort of payment where both sender and receiver are honest, which can result in optimal communication pattern and message size. Otherwise, at least if one of the counterparties in a payment is malicious, we will later, at this scenario, we will use Byzantine broadcast and agreement. But in an optimistic case, we will not need neither agreement nor broadcast. Again, we will see more details about it in a minute. Another pitfall is replay attacks and double spending attacks. Basically, replay attack refers to the attack where adversary replays a transaction more than once, which results in draining the sender's account. And the solution for that can be using like account counter, which is denoted by this X here. And as we saw, for example, transaction was of this form before. Now we will have this small modification of adding transaction counter to the transaction as well. So Alice signs this message, which contains sort of transaction counter as well. And the important point here is that all accounts in the state, basically the state which is distributedly managed, have their latest X recorded by every single maintainer or server of the system. And accepting a transaction requires counter increment. And later we will see how we can enhance the privacy by hiding all this stuff. Okay, so what's happening here is that each user maintains their account locally. For example, here we see the account of Alice, which contains balance of Alice and transaction counter of Alice. And any change in the account needs to be signed by the system's maintainers. And one of the primitives that we use is a threshold T out of N threshold signature, which actually Alice gets a signature of all maintainers, or at least a threshold number of them, on her account. And threshold signature simply says, like, it's a primitive where several signers or parties can issue a digital signature as a group, and then we will have one unique consolidated sort of signature which can be verified against groups publicly. And at least T number out of N are required, at least T valid signature is required to actually to be able to generate this consolidated signature, which is from the perspective of verifier, is just one single signature that is verified against groups publicly. So simply, let me show here by pictures. So here we have our Alice here who actually sends her account. Again, there's no privacy here. Sends her account to maintainers, and for example, maintainer number 1 here is going to generate the signature on Alice's account. Maintainer number 2 does the same thing, and after getting enough signatures, Alice can, for example, generate this consolidated signature, which can be verified against groups publicly. And then later, for example, if Alice sends this signature to maintainer number 3, maintainer number 3 can be sure that, okay, at least threshold number of maintainers have signed the account, and as a result, this account of Alice here, which is a message of the signature, is a valid one with respect to systems rule. Okay, so each maintainer keeps a table with this entry: Alice's public key, and the last known certified transaction counter of Alice. And if maintainers are stateless, then they cannot recognize the most recent user state, which means that replay attacks may be possible. So it's important to have like stateful maintainers rather than stateless. Now, let's briefly talk about privacy requirements. Later, we will see how we can achieve I mean, so far, the stuff that I explained so far are going to be used. There were just intuition behind our protocol, our payment system. Now I want to talk briefly about privacy, and then later we will see how we can achieve privacy with the given intuition. And I should say that in parentheses that all of us know that privacy is of great importance, especially in blockchain ecosystem where everything is publicly available and everyone sees everything, transaction value, identity of transaction, everything is like public, and we are really interested to actually preserve the privacy while making sure that system works fine. So privacy concerns are as follows. I mean, privacy can have several aspects, but I mean, some of them are as follows. For example, the first one says that we are interested to hide the balance of user. Basically, the wallet information of users should be hidden, number of transactions performed by a party, and also value transferred in a transaction, and also identities of sender and receiver. And we aim to accomplish all. Let me quickly provide a quick sort of literature review. For the full literature review, please see the full version of the paper on ePrint. I mean, for example, Zcash, which is a famous privacy-preserving cryptocurrency out there. The drawbacks of Zcash are as follows. It lacks, it has efficiency problem, which means that it is unsuitable for resource-constrained users. Also, users are supposed to download the whole ledger and to understand that which transaction actually belongs to them. And also, there is no comprehensive regulation friendliness. Another relevant work is like Platypus, which is a CBDC central bank digital currency system, which is vulnerable to single point of failure or trust. And also, there's no comprehensive regulation friendliness. For example, there's no support for regulations like anti-money laundering or AML and combating financing terrorism. And there's no universal composable security, which is really an important consideration, especially in this blockchain ecosystem where we need composability actually. For example, to use this payment system simultaneously with other DeFi, for example, applications. Okay, so now let's see how we are going to achieve privacy. So users maintain the confidentiality of their account with respect to all network participants, including system servers or maintainers, while proving via efficient, non-interactive zero-knowledge proofs that they are actually updating their account correctly. What I mean here by efficient NISC or non-interactive zero-knowledge is that, we are not using like general-purpose zero-knowledge proofs like ZK snarks, which are more general than Sigma protocols. We are using Sigma protocols, which of course we make them non-interactive using Fiat-Shamir technique. And for algebraic functions like discrete logarithm-based relations, Sigma protocols are much more efficient on prover side, on proof computation, compared to a little bit more general-purpose zero-knowledge proofs like ZK snarks. All the zero-knowledge proofs that I'm going to talk about are actually achieved via non-interactive version of Sigma protocols. So basically, through these NISCs, users, both sender and receiver, prove the position of a signed account by the maintainers, affirming that the proposed account update is actually based on their previously approved account by maintainers. And to achieve efficient unlinkability, the user actually randomizes the signature. So what's happening here is that here we see this is our transaction information, right? So the first one is a signature of maintainers, which has been randomized by user on user's old account. Of course, for privacy requirements, we are interested to actually hide the old account. And basically, the signature is going to be verified without revealing the message, which is here, the old account of the user. And also, user generates its new account, and of course, the blinded version of it is going to be sent to the maintainers. You can think of it as this transaction, like this whole transaction here, which is something that we send via insecure channel, so adversary can see this message to maintainers. And through NISC proofs, we prove that actually this signature here is consistent with our new account that has been blinded. So basically, we prove that our old account is consistent with our new account without revealing our old account and also new account. Again, we will see more details. As we saw for replay attack prevention, we used a transaction counter denoted by this X. And for privacy, we should hide X because X reveals the number of times user has been a sender or receiver in a transaction. So the question is, how we can prevent a replay or double spending attack if X is hidden? And the answer is that, the account was of this form. Account of Alice was containing actually balance and transaction counter. Now it's going to be modified and in this form, actually. It contains now balance of Alice, secret key of Alice, and also secret key to the power of transaction counter, which is this X. And instead of revealing X, we reveal G to the secret key to the X, actually. We reveal this group element. And basically, in X transaction, the user reveals G to the secret key to the X, and based on a strong decisional Diffie-Hellman assumption, we are sure that there's no privacy issue here. So basically, this assumption here says that G to the X to the power 0, G to the X to the 1, and G to the X to the 2 up to G to the X to the D is indistinguishable from random group elements that have been randomly selected from the underlying group. Which means that now we have a pseudo-random tag sequence. So user in its first transaction reveals G. In the first transaction, of course, user reveals G to the X to the 1. In the second one, reveals G to the X to the 2, and so on and so forth. And we have pseudo-random tag sequence. So now we had seen that, okay, so transaction had contained these two elements. Now we have to add G to the secret key to the X to the transaction. Again, remember this was our transaction information. And of course, we have to prove the well-formedness of the group element G to the secret key to the X via our Nizic proof, which basically says that, let's consider sender. We are sender now, and our old account was of this form, and the new account is going to be of this form. We as a sender, we generate our new account, which says that our balance is reduced by value of transaction, which is V, and also secret key to the X is going to be like secret key to the X plus 1. So we have greatly incremented the transaction counter. And of course, this PINISC should prove the well-formedness of all these values here. Should prove that, okay, well, this G to the secret key to the X is G to the power of something, which is actually the third element inside our old account. And we prove that, okay, this old account that we had the signature of maintainers on it, which basically means that, maintainers have already confirmed our old account. Again, remember, we are not revealing our old account. All of them are hidden. And this PINISC also should prove that, okay, this G to the secret key to the X, the power of this G is actually this secret key to the X, and also the third element inside our new account is like secret key to the X, which was here in our old account, multiplied by secret key. So basically to achieve transaction counter increment, which we said that it's important for double spending prevention. And okay, so let's talk about regulatory compliance and see how we can achieve regulatory compliance in this privacy-preserving setting. So privacy in payment systems actually highlights different regulatory requirements, which are as follows. For example, the first one is know your customer, which says that participants with accounts in the system have been properly identified. Or anti-money laundering, which says suspicious transactions should be de-anonymized and sources of funds can be traced to make sure that source of fund is actually legitimate so that we are not, for example, laundering money. Another one is combating financing terrorism, which says that the receiver of fund is not, for example, terrorist. We have to be able to actually prove that in this privacy setting. And also we have other requirements, like, for example, financial crime, which says that transactions should have limits. Again, we will see more details about these. and suspicious individuals can have their transactions identified. And for financial stability requirements, accounts we have, for example, limited balance for no hoarding requirements. This is a requirement that has been mentioned by several central banks like Bank of England, Central Bank in the UK, and so on. So let's see one example. With respect to those limitations that I said, for example, we have a limitation on the balance of user. So the balance of the user should be upper bounded by Bmax. Again, remember, we have identity privacy, which means that we don't have any idea who is, this is Alice here, but we don't have any idea actually who is this guy. And also, we are not able to actually see the balance. We want to make sure that the balance of this privacy preserved user is upper bounded by Bmax. Another requirement is like sum of all sent values and sum of all received values by every single user in this system should be upper bounded respectively by, for example, S max and R max. And also transaction value is also upper bounded by this Vmax, which means that our previous account was of this form. Now we have to introduce like additional elements like this S and R, which S is sum of all sent values by user and R is sum of all received values by the user. And also user now is important to actually prove that they meet all these requirements that we talk about via its PEReDi, via its zero knowledge proof. So consider this example that we are like looking at this transaction info. We are actually considering receiver who receives, let's say, value V. So the old account is of this form, and the new account is going to be of this form. Well, where actually the balance of receiver is increased by value of transaction V, sum of all sent values is not changed because we are just receiver, and the receiver actually receives value V, which means that sum of all received values should be increased by V as well. And as we said, like here we have secret key to the X plus 1. And what's important is that we have to prove, first of all, this value of transaction is a positive one. So basically the value is not negative. And also for compliance with this, for example, requirement that we see here, you have to provide like range proof that this value V is actually in this range between 0 and Vmax. And also the balance is upper bounded by this Bmax that we saw here. And similarly, R plus V, which is sum of all received value, is upper bounded by this R max. We can prove all of them by range proofs, like, for example, zero knowledge range proofs, like bullet proofs, and so on. Another regulatory compliance thing is a need for privacy revocation in special cases, where we have designed a distributed protocol for that. So there is no single entity that has the full power to revoke the privacy. So we are able to actually revoke the privacy in a distributed way by a bunch of servers who are called privacy revokers. So basically what's happening is that given a privacy preserved transaction, these guys, threshold number of them at least, are able to revoke the privacy and identify the identity of the sender and receiver and the value of the transaction. So it means that here in our transaction information, we have to include another element, which is this one, which is basically a very simple one, like threshold encryption under the public key of privacy revokers. And the plain text of this threshold encryption is the public key of sender, public key of receiver, and value of transaction. And again, we have to prove that this threshold encryption is well formed. Basically, for instance, here, as we see, the sender is Dave, but we have to make sure that, for example, Dave cannot put the public key of Bob, for example, here. For the sake of time, I didn't explain user registration protocol, but what's happening is that in the user registration protocol, we have to bind these public keys, for example, public key of sender, to its real-world identifier and or decentralized identity or self-sovereign identity credential to be able to actually, after decrypting this threshold encryption, identify the unique real-world identifier of those users. Okay, so let me quickly also talk about another regulatory compliance requirement, which is a need for tracing. Again, we have a distributed protocol here. No single authority has the power to actually trace. Again, we need a collaboration of some servers which we call them like tracing authorities. They can be maintainers of the system, or they can be any arbitrary authorities who are responsible for tracing users. And what does it mean? It means that given a real-world identifier of a malicious user, let's say here, just for simplicity, I have written like Dave, but it should be like real-world identifier of malicious user. So given this real-world identifier, these tracing authorities are able to extract transactions in which Dave has been a counterparty either as a sender in these first two transactions or receiver in the last two transactions. So this is tracing operation, which is done using a distributed protocol. Let's see a little bit more details. So what's happening here is that it is important for every single user of the system, like for example Dave here, to verifiably secret share its secret key among n tracing authorities. For example, let's say this guy is our first server. The secret sharing is going to be the secret sharing that Dave should give to the server in user registration protocol is of this form: secret key 1 Dave up to the secret key n Dave, which belongs to the n server. And of course, I mean, user should prove that this secret key is actually is a correct secret key that user is going to get the signature of maintainers on it. Again, remember, Dave, every single user in our system has an account. An account gets the signature of maintainers. So basically, in user registration phase, where you want to get the signature of maintainers on your initial account, again, account contains secret key. You have to prove that via this like verifiable secret sharing that you are actually sharing the correct secret key that is going to be signed in a privacy preserved way using, let's say, threshold blind signature. As we said, I mean, this account is not given to maintainers for signing it. So basically, this account is a blinded one, and you have to prove that everything is well formed. Okay, so let's move on. So what's happening is that each tracing authority records this entry: real-world identifier of the user, which in this case is Dave, for instance, and its sort of secret share. Now we are looking at, let's say, ICE server, the ICE secret sharing of Dave's secret key, which has been given to the server in the user registration protocol. And then having this share, right, threshold number of these tracing authorities can enter into the efficient entity. Again, we are not using general purpose MPC. It's like a special purpose efficient MPC, which says that at least T plus 1, let me provide these, I didn't talk about like thresholds. Let's say we have n servers, and at maximum T of them can be sort of corrupted by adversary. And let's say this n is like 3T plus 1. So basically, we will need T plus 1 pairs of the secret key here, right, for our MPC. T plus 1 secret shares are going to be enough for generating G to the X to the secret key, G to the secret key to the X, right? So basically what's happening is that follows, that having this shared, T plus 1 servers enter into the MPC protocol, and they generate all the tracing tags of Dave up to the last transaction. So this is Dave's first tracing tag, which is G to the secret key to the power of 1, G to the secret key to the power of 2, and so on and so forth to the G to the secret key the power of last transaction. which gives us all these transactions here, right? We see these are tracing tags. As we saw, transaction information contains these tracing tags, right? G to the secret key to the X. And after having the output of this MPC, we will have G to the secret key to the 1, which will give us this transaction, and we can distinguish this transaction from the whole big anonymity set. And which means that now we are able to actually see this threshold encryption of that transaction. Again, I mean, nothing again, sorry, I forgot to say, this transaction information, at least these two things, like tracing tag and, sorry, just let me, okay, this tracing tag and this threshold encryption is a footprint of every single transaction that maintainers of system are going to record, right? And after computing all these tracing tags, they will see their table and see that, okay, we compute, for example, let's say the first tag, G to secret key of 1, which will gives us this threshold encryption, which this Dave here, I mean, having this threshold encryption, we can, of course, decrypt this and as a result, obtain the plaintext of this threshold encryption, which is public key of sender, public key of receiver, and value of transaction. Which the public key of sender here is the public key of Dave. And if this transaction is suspicious, which means that, okay, well, if Dave is suspicious and we are tracing Dave, it's likely that Dave's payment counterparty is suspicious and malicious guy as well, so that we can understand the public key of this guy, which is public key of receiver, by decrypting this threshold encryption as well. So basically, the intuition here is that tracing Dave will give us all the transactions that has been done by Dave, and using this sort of privacy revocation that we described in this slide, you can get more information by decrypting the threshold encryption of the associated transaction to understand even more information, like what was the value of transaction and what was the identity of the receiver. Moving on, now let's see all the things that we described so far. Let's see them from 0 to 100, in one big picture to have a better understanding about what's going on. So we said that transaction information is of this form, right? We have signature of maintainers, which has been randomized for unlinkability purposes on our old account. We generate our new account, and also, of course, we blind it. And we actually output G to the secret key to the X as well, which is our tracing tag. And also, we have threshold encryption under the public key of privacy revokers of these plain texts, public key of sender, public key of receiver, and value of transaction. And we have nice, efficient, non-interactive zero-knowledge proof, which is, again, sigma protocol that has been non-interactive using Flash-Hammer that proves the well-formedness of all these values here. Basically, for example, we have encrypted this threshold encryption that is provided is under the public key of rightful privacy revokers of the system, whose public key is known to all. So what's happening is as follows, that we have our sender and receiver. First of all, the first step, they exchange some randomness. This row S and row R are randomness that are going to be used in this threshold encryption. They exchange these randomness, and also, of course, sender sends the value of transaction to receiver. And the second step is generating their NISC proofs. So every single user, sender and receiver, they generate NISC, which is this one, that all these information that we see here are well-formed. And the third step is that sender sends its own transaction, denoted by this transaction information of sender. Let me zoom in, sorry. So transaction information of sender, and receiver sends its own transaction information, which is denoted by TIR, through this sender anonymous channel to maintainers. So what I mean by sender anonymous channel is that, as I said, or maybe I didn't say. Our modeling is in the universal composition UC setting, where we are using ideal functionality of channel to actually formally model the channel. Here we are using standard anonymous channel. What I mean by standard anonymous channel is that regardless of cryptographic information that your cryptographic techniques and methods that we are using, like for example, stuff that we see here, network level attacks can reveal the identity of sender and receiver. For that, we are using sender anonymous channel. For example, you can think of things like Tor, for instance, that actually prevents network level attacks. And again, like this sender anonymous channel here is insecure channel. Basically, adversary sees all this information in transaction information. And again, like these two things here are based on threshold blind signature. So we have a threshold blind signature. We are using threshold version and also blind version of pointing standard signature in our paper. These two information, like the signature of maintainers and also your new blinded account, are created based on the underlying threshold blind signature. So again, going back to the third step, sender and receiver, they send their transaction information via this sender anonymous channel, which is insecure, which means that the adversary sees all the information, to maintainers. And what's happening is that every single maintainer is going to locally see their local table, denoted by this LT, and check, first of all, they check this NISC proof, right? To see if transaction information is well-formed or not. And also they check their local table to see if double spending, for instance, is taking place or not. And again, this tag here is something that actually enforces users to not double spend. If everything is fine, basically you are not using your old account twice, because I mean, as soon as you use your old account twice, the tag is going to be the same one, right? Again, like remember, we enforce this tag generation. We prove that this tag is well formed with our NISP proof. So basically, you are able to only use your old account once in a transaction that you have like moved on to your next state of your account, which is this new account, and you are revealing this. And what's happening is that every single maintainer here is going to record these tags, right? Tag of the sender denoted by the TS, and tag of sender, tag of receiver is denoted by this TR. So these tags are going to be recorded by maintainers for double spending prevention. And once you submit your transaction, they will check, as I said, their local table to see if they have seen such a tag before or not. And if everything is fine, means proof is verified. This signature here is verified without, again, revealing account old. If everything is fine, and this, they will record this transaction identifier, which is a footprint of every single transaction, which has these 4 values. The last 2, as we said, are tracing tags of sender and receiver, this G to the secret key to the X values. And this Kiayias and PSI-R, the first 2 values, are these threshold encryptions of sort of public of sender and receiver and the value of transaction, which will give us this PSI-S is going to give us public of sender, PSI-R is going to give us public key of receiver after decryption. So every single transaction is going to leave this transaction identifier as a footprint in maintainers' local database. Again, maintainers do not talk to each other. There's no consensus or there's no Byzantine agreement now, assuming the sender and receiver are honest and all the stuff here are well formed, everything is fine. So what's happening is that every single, they are not visible, but yeah, anyway. So what's happening here is that every single server or maintainer number 1, maintainer number 2, and so on and so forth, they will, for example, maintainer number 2 is going to record this transaction identifier in its local table number 2, right? And then later, once necessary, they will go back to the transaction identifier. For example, in tracing, they will go and, as we saw, for example, we wanted to trace Dave, they will go and find, for example, maintainer number 2 will check its local table to find the secret key of Dave, its own secret share of Dave's secret key, right? Which was denoted by this, and generate these tracing tags, G to the secret key to the X, and see their local table, which they have recorded this transaction identifier to be able to actually get these threshold encryptions and then later decrypt them. Again, moving on, what's happening next is that every single maintainer are going to, for example, assume Jace maintainer. Jace maintainer is going to sign the new blinded account. Actually, this is a blind signature share. And this is a signature, basically blind signature of Jace maintainer on sender's new blinded account. Basically this one here. If everything is fine, the Jace maintainer is going to sign it. Also, the Jace maintainer is going to sign a new blinded account of the receiver by generating these two signature shares. And these two signature shares are going to be sent by Jace maintainer back to the sender and receiver. And as a final step, what's happening is that having, as we said, like we are using T out of N threshold blind signature. So basically these two signature shares are going to be sort of together with other shares, at least let's say T valid 1, are going to give us, for example, for the sender is going to give sender this consolidated and unblinded non-threshold signature, consolidated aggregated signature, which is a signature on the new account of the sender, which actually will play the role of this signature in sender's next transaction, right? And also like receiver does the same thing. And now from the perspective of sender and receiver, the transaction is finalized and they can move on to the next transaction. Regarding the performance evaluation, I should mention that considering all regulatory compliance related information in user's account and all these operations like tracing, privacy revocation that I was explaining in a distributed way, basically the whole transaction on, for example, sender side can take around 1 second, assuming, let's say, for almost like, let's say, for example, 10 maintainers, which means that system has a sort of good degree of efficiency for real-world implementations of like for retail payment usages actually. And yeah, so let me quickly summarize our contributions. So to the best of our knowledge, at the time of like publishing the paper, this is the first fully privacy preserving and comprehensively regulation-friendly payment system with a formal modeling. Our formal modeling is in the universal composition setting or UC setting, which is a really important consideration, especially in like DeFi and blockchain, where it gives us this guarantee that you can securely compose the system with other fintech, let's say, systems. We have introduced a distributed and efficient construction that realizes our ideal functionality based on standard cryptographic assumptions. And we have shown that there is no need for, neither Byzantine broadcast nor Byzantine agreement is needed in the optimistic sort of execution path of a payment. However, again, I highlight that as soon as one payment counterparty becomes malicious, we will need Byzantine agreements among maintainers to actually make sure that everything's fine. But in optimistic case, we are able to actually securely remove the need for them, and as a result, have efficient communication pattern and message size. We have introduced a novel distributed approach for tracing suspicious users with simulation-based security, which is efficient than previously known techniques. And also this auditing mechanism does not require, again, like Byzantine agreement or broadcast. And also our CBDC construction can facilitate concurrent digital currency aborting transactions and know your transaction operations. And yes, please for the full version of the paper, see the ePrint version. And finally, I would like to introduce like two of our recent works, which are relevant in the bigger sort of line of research of privacy and regulation in blockchains and digital currencies. One of them is like PEReDi, which soon will be publicly, it will be publicly announced, which is a privacy-preserving, auditable, and regulation-friendly stablecoin, and Thera, which is still resilient anonymous signature with applications to decentralized identities. And yeah, thank you very much, and I'm happy to take any questions you have. Cheers.
Thank you, Amirreza, for your nice talk. So I'll stop the recording.